Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Tea Sundays. So really this whole December is just about getting to know tea more. So I'll just be showing you guys more content that's centered around just gearing up towards the end of the year, refreshing and starting over for a new year. And then next year we'll go back to the interview content. So this December is a little bit just more chilled, and it's just gonna be you and I, and me just showing you the way I sort of prepare for the end of the year and for the upcoming year. So today's video is really about reading. I'm a strong believer in reading. I think it opens your mind to many worlds that you and many ways of thinking that you maybe wouldn't necessarily be exposed to. So it allows you someone else's perspective who's actually, done the traveling or done the sort of internal processing and reflection and thinking to really share with you what they believe and what they think. And I think that has a way of shaping your thoughts. So to end of the year, I would definitely recommend these two books. So the first one is Year of Yes. Literally, the first time I read this book, it changed my life, and I am not exaggerating. Like, it legitimately changed my life because it just changed my whole perspective of life. And it's by Shonda Rhimes. I would definitely recommend that you guys buy these. You can also get like books at a cheaper price on like places like Loot and Take a Lot. They some every now and again have specials. But obviously, if you prefer the store, you can go to like places like Exclusive Books and other. But there's also like so many other stores that sell like the books at a cheaper price. But anyway, those are the sort of three main ones that I buy my books from. The second one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. I can't even explain it. Like, completely changed my life. Like, I know I just said that about Year of Yes, but these two books combined, like, out of this world. Like, you guys have no idea. And I'm in my cornrows because I'm now at home, and I don't have to be wearing my wig. But anyway, I thought a nice thing for me to do, and I figure even if maybe you're like lazy to read, but like December is always a nice time to read because you're sort of like relaxing, everything's sort of slowing down, you have time to yourself a little bit more. But anyway, if you don't want to read it, I would recommend that you read it, even if it's in Jan or whatever, but it's completely going to change your perspective. But anyway, what I thought I would do is that I would actually read a certain excerpts from it. So I'm going to read two sort of, chapters mainly, but in Year of Yes, it's going to be like one chapter and like sort of one introduction into the idea of Year of Yes. So I think I'm going to start with Year of Yes, and then I'm going to build up to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like, I read them, I don't know if you guys can see them. Okay, I read them in this order. So Year of Yes first, and then I did Subtle Arts. And like, for me, that works. Also, I think Year of Yes is like a lot more bulkier. Anyway, so I'm going to read with you guys. So the first chapter is entitled No, and this is the passage I'm going to be reading. You never say yes to anything. 6 startling words. That's the beginning. That's the origin of it all. My sister Dolores said 6 startling words and changed everything. She said 6 words, and now as I write this, I've become a different person. You never say yes to anything. She didn't even say the 6 startling words. She muttered them really. I think that's, So I'll read another chapter, or part of the chapter rather. So I don't like giving speeches in general because of the fear and the terror. But this speech I really did not want to give. A Dartmouth commencement speech, dry mouth, heart beats so fast, so fast. When people give these kinds of speeches, they usually tell you all kinds of wise and heartfelt things. They have wisdom to impart. They have lessons to share. They tell you follow your dreams, listen to your spirit, change the world, make your mark, find your inner voice and make it sing. Embrace failure, dream and dream big. As a matter of fact, dream and don't stop dreaming until your dream comes true. I think that's crap. I think a lot of people dream. And while they're busy dreaming, the real happy people, the really successful people, the really interesting, powerful, engaged people are busy doing. The dreamers, they stare at the sky and they make plans and they hope and they think and they talk about it endlessly. And they start a lot of sentences with, I want to be, or I wish, I want to be a writer. I wish I could travel around the world. And they dream it. The buttoned up ones meet for cocktails and they all brag about their dreams. The hippie ones have vision boards and they meditate on their dreams. You write in your journal about your dreams or discuss it endlessly with your best friend or your girlfriend or your mother. And it feels really good. You're talking about it. You're planning it. Kind of. You are blue sky in your life. And that is what everyone says you should do, right? That's what Oprah and Bill Gates did to get successful, right? No. Dreams are lovely, but they are just dreams. Fleeting, ephemeral, pretty. But dreams do not come true just because you dream them. It's hard work that makes things happen. It's hard work that creates change. Lesson 1. Ditch the dream. Be a doer, not a dreamer. Maybe you know exactly what you dream of being. Or maybe you're paralyzed because you have no idea what your passion is. The truth is, it doesn't matter. You don't have to know. You just have to keep moving forward. You just have to keep doing something, seizing the next opportunity, staying open to trying something new. It doesn't have to fit your vision of the perfect job or the perfect life. Perfect is boring, and dreams are not real. Just do. You think, I wish I could travel. You sell your crappy car and buy a ticket and go to Bangkok right now. I'm serious. You say, I want to be a writer. Guess what? A writer is someone who writes every day. Start writing. Or you don't have a job. Get one. Any job. Don't sit at home waiting for the magical dream opportunity. Who are you? Prince William? No. Get a job. Work. Do until you can do something else. I didn't dream of being a TV writer. Never, not once, when I was here in the hallowed halls of the Ivy League, did I say to myself, Self, I want to write TV. You know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be Nobel Prize winning author Toni Morrison. This was my dream. I blue skied it like crazy. I dreamed and dreamed. And while I was dreaming, I was living in my sister's basement. Dreamers often end up living in the basement of relatives. FYI. Anyway, there I was in that basement. I was dreaming of being Nobel Prize winning author Toni Morrison. Guess what? I couldn't be Nobel Prize winning author Toni Morrison because Toni Morrison already had that job and she wasn't interested in giving it up. One day, I was sitting in that basement and I read an article in the New York Times that said it was harder to get into USC Film School than it was to go into Harvard Law School. I could dream about being Toni Morrison, or I could do. At film school, I discovered an entirely new way of telling stories, a way that suited me, a way that brought me joy, a way that flipped the switch in my brain and changed the way I saw the world. Years later, I had dinner with Toni Morrison. All she wanted to talk about was Grey's Anatomy. That never would have happened if I hadn't stopped dreaming of becoming her and gotten busy becoming myself. I mean, I hope that definitely makes you reflect in some way. And I'm also going to be doing reflections for the year, so that's going to be something as well. Now I'm moving on to the subtle art. So it goes, you are always choosing. Imagine that somebody puts a gun to your head and tells you that you have to run 26.2 miles in under 5 hours, or else he'll kill you and your entire family. That would suck. Now imagine that you bought nice shoes and running gear, trained religiously for months, and completed your first marathon with all of your closest family and friends cheering you on at the finish line. That could potentially be one of the proudest moments of your life. Exact same 26.2 miles, exact same person running them, exact same pain coursing through your exact same legs. But when you choose it freely and are prepared for it, it was glorious and an important milestone in your life. When it was forced upon you against your will, it was one of the most terrifying and painful experiences of your life. Often, the only difference between a problem being painful or being powerful is a sense that we chose it and that we are responsible for it. If you're miserable in your current situation, chances are it's because you feel like some part of it is outside your control, that there's a problem you have no ability to solve, a problem that was somehow thrust upon you without your choosing. When we feel that we're choosing our problems, we feel empowered. When we feel that our problems are being forced upon us against our will, we feel victimized and miserable. William James had problems, really bad problems. Although born into a wealthy and prominent family, from birth James suffered life-threatening health issues, an eye problem that left him temporarily blind as a child, a terrible stomach condition that caused excessive vomiting and forced him to adopt an obscure and highly sensitive diet, trouble with his hearing, back spasms so bad that for days at a time he often couldn't sit or stand upright. Due to his health problems, James spent most of his time at home. He didn't have many friends and he wasn't particularly good at school. Instead, he passed the days painting. That was the only thing he liked and the only thing he felt particularly good at. Unfortunately, nobody else thought he was good at it. When he grew to adulthood, nobody bought his work, and as the years dragged on, his father, a wealthy businessman, began ridiculing him for his laziness and his lack of talent. Meanwhile, his younger brother, Henry James, went on to become a world-renowned novelist. His sister, Alice James, made a good living as a writer as well. William was the family oddball, the black sheep. In a desperate attempt to salvage the young man's future, James' father used his business connections to get him admitted into Harvard Medical School. It was his last chance, his father told him. If he screwed this up, there was no hope for him. But James never felt at home or at peace at Harvard. Medicine never appealed to him. He spent the whole time feeling like a fake and a fraud. After all, if he couldn't overcome his own problems, how could he ever hope to have the energy to help others with theirs? After touring a psychiatric facility one day, James mused in his diary that he had felt more in common with the patients than with the doctors. A few years went by, and again, to his father's disapproval, James dropped out of medical school. But rather than deal with the brunt of his father's wrath, he decided to get away. He signed up to join an anthropological expedition to the Amazon rainforest. This was in the 1860s, so transcontinental travel was difficult and dangerous. If you ever played the computer game Oregon Trail when you were a kid, it was kind of like that, with the dysentery and drowning oxen and everything. Anyway, James made it all the way to the Amazon, where the real adventure was to begin. Surprisingly, his fragile health held up that whole way. But once he finally made it, on the first day of the expedition, he promptly contracted smallpox and nearly died in the jungle. Then his back spasms returned, painful to the point of making James unable to walk. By this time, he was emaciated and starved from the smallpox, immobilized by his bad back, and left alone in the middle of South America. The rest of the expedition having gone on without him, with no clear way to get home, a journey that would take months and likely kill him anyway. But somehow he eventually made it back to New England, where he was greeted by an even more disappointed father. By this point, the young man wasn't so young anymore, nearly 30 years old, still unemployed. A failure at everything he had attempted, with a body that routinely betrayed him and wasn't likely to ever get better. Despite all the advantages and opportunities he'd been given in life, everything had fallen apart. The only constant in his life seemed to be suffering and disappointment. James fell into depression and began making plans to take his own life. But one night, while reading lectures by the philosopher Charles Peirce, James decided to conduct a little experiment. In his diary, he wrote that he would spend 1 year believing that he was 100% responsible for everything that occurred in his life, no matter what. During this period, he would do everything in his power to change his circumstances, no matter the likelihood of failure. If nothing improved in that year, then it would be apparent that he was truly powerless to the circumstances around him, and then he would take his own life. The punchline: William James went on to become the father of American psychology. His work has been translated into a bazillion languages, and he's regarded as one of the most influential intellectuals, philosopher, psychologists of his generation. He would go on to teach at Harvard and would tour much of the United States and Europe giving lectures. He would marry and have 5 children, one of whom, Henry, would become a famous biographer and win a Pulitzer Prize. James would later refer to his little experiment as his rebirth and would credit it with everything that he later accomplished in his life. There is a simple realization from which all personal improvement and growth emerges. This is the realization that we, individually, are responsible for everything in our lives, no matter the external circumstances. We don't always control what happens to us, but we always control how we interpret what happens to us, as well as how we respond. Whether we consciously recognize it or not, we are always responsible for our experiences. It's impossible not to be. Choosing to not consciously interpret events in our lives is still an interpretation of the events in our lives. Choosing to not respond to the events in our lives is still a response to the events in our lives. Even if you get run over by a clown car and pissed on by a busload of children, it's still your responsibility to interpret the meaning of the event and choose a response. Whether we like it or not, we are always taking an active role in what's occurring to and within us. We are always interpreting the meaning of every moment and every occurrence. We are always choosing the values by which we live and the metrics by which we measure everything that happens to us. Often, the same event can be good or bad, depending on the metric we choose to use. The point is, we are always choosing, whether we recognize it or not. Always. It comes back to how, in reality, there is no such thing as not giving a single fuck. It's impossible. We must all give a fuck about something. To not give a fuck about anything is still to give a fuck about something. The real question is, what are we choosing to give a fuck about? What values are we choosing to base our actions on? What metrics are we choosing to use to measure our life? And are those good choices, good values, and good metrics? So, you can choose to go read the books, or if you choose not to. I hope that in this video you at least learn something, and I hope that it somewhat gives you a new perspective and changes something. So guys, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, subscribed. Please share the channel. Let's get more subscribers, let's get more people on board. I'd really love to be up to 300 subscribers by the end of this year. So yeah, I'd really be excited if you guys would help me make that happen. But yeah, until next time, see you soon, and yeah, let's do this December journey together.